I think, yes, you can hear me okay, right? How are you doing today? Just good? I mean, that was phenomenal. I learned a lot in that very short amount of time. It's its own social study, so I really appreciate your vulnerability in answering those questions, and I hope that you feel comfortable enough to stay vulnerable for this talk. I want this to feel very conversational, very loose. I want it to give, we're family at a table. Think of me as the non-judgmental auntie. Are we okay with that? Are we okay with that, right? Because I'm obviously a little older, but I don't want you to think that I'm judging or I'm putting lived wisdom or traditional perspectives and worldview on anyone in here. I just want us to have a conversation. Because one of the beautiful things about being kind of in an in-between state of generations is you're privy to the thought process of those who raised you, those whom you're raising, and those who are in your peer group. It's this beautiful dynamic. So I want us to talk because one of the things that Dr. Moore and I spoke about when I prepped this was essentially a little bit of a continuation from my talk last year, which was calling for an SOS, saving our sisters. But this is gonna focus on relationships, and we're gonna get very real and very raw, but always respectful. And that was the best prelude, by the way, with the Pop the Balloon Challenge. So this talk is called, Are We Really Beefin? I mean, that's very East Coast. Everybody knows what beefin means in this context? Are we really beefing? The continued saga of Black men and Black women relationship drama. But I do want to start by saying we fully, wholly, and sincerely recognize and respect the diversity of all forms of love beyond a heteronormative lens, okay, and the representations of this talk. So I want to affirm that out loud. But let's go there. Some might argue that it started with a woman by the name of Kamala Harris and her husband, Doug. Anybody know about this? Anybody know who that is? By show of hands, anybody know who I'm talking about? All right, so y'all ready? We're actually gonna be confronting the complexities of our current reality, meaning what we don't talk about is we're actually still grappling with our history of enslavement. And you may be saying, Dr. Walks, that's so tired, that's so tight. Stay with me, let me break it down. This includes centuries of generational enslavement that forced separation and chronically divided Black families. Do you know what that means? That means for over 400 years, closer to 500 now, that we have been strategically separated as a familial unit. That also means that it didn't just stop post-bellum. That didn't mean that when Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation and Juneteenth, which we'll soon be celebrating next month, came, that we all found each other and had a reunion and it was love again. Most of us never reconnected. Most of our children were orphaned. And through miscegenation, our bloodlines became further mixed and complex. Let me continue. Let's go a little bit into the 20th century. There was a strategic decimation of the structure of the Black family unit beyond enslavement and well into the contemporary examples surrounding access. What does that mean, Dr. Walks? Did you know that in most civic governments, in order to qualify for assistance, meaning project housing, subsidized housing, did you know that most women could not qualify if a Black man, the father, also resided in the home? Let that sink in. Do you understand what that means? So in order to qualify for subsidized housing, your partner, the man specifically, could not reside in the home. So that already meant that we were suddenly shrouded with having to cover up and hide the unit of the family. And we risk not having financial assistance to house our family at the expense of expelling the father. This is as recent as the 1960s and 70s, my young brothers and sisters. So I want you to think about that. That was an impossible choice, to house, clothe, and feed my children, or to have my partner, my man, the father of my children, reside in the house with us. And it was an impossible choice for the father to leave the family. Not all brothers are Rolling Stones, so let's eliminate that fallacy. There was a strategic decimation, okay? Next, then there's the politicization of creating a chasm between black men and black women. I hope you're ready. This advances dissension, y'all. Real or imagined. It means it creates conflict, a discord within our community, but also reinforces really dangerous tropes that benefit externally racist communities. What do I mean by that? Let's go back to Kamala Harris as a tipping point. That moment was far, far, far greater and prolific than just an election. It was also meant to show how fractured our everlasting love was. What did we hear immediately following the election? Think about this. Think about this. We immediately heard conversations that exploded online, in barbershops, in braiding shops, in salons, that black men were not showing up the way they should have. Black women were carrying the load. Many black women were articulating that they felt betrayed by the brothers who didn't understand the community's assignment. And then you had some folks coming for Barack who wanted to have an intra-communal conversation with brothers that they thought was inappropriate. Y'all remember that, or am I by myself? Okay. But what we do know is black men did show up. Maybe not at the same rate as black women, but they did show up. But that narrative was buried, all right, in the media. Then, immediately following, we had a rampant attack on social media and reality TV that fueled the fire. And for the record, let me state, I definitely believe some cameras should be shut off and some mics need to be snatched. Okay? We have the Pop the Balloon Challenge, which you all just graciously participated in or witnessed. But I also want to problematize the challenge a little bit. Not what we witness here, but the one that's on TV. I want to problematize it because what it can do is reduce representations of relationships to that of superficiality and harsh judgment. Do you know what I mean by that? How do I read you and I just looked at you? How do I know your story and I haven't had a conversation with you? How do I know where you've come from and we've not even yet broken bread? How do I know who your people are? How do I know or expect any vulnerabilities from you when I'm judging you on the type of shoes you're wearing? So when we think about the rapid fire, the very quick attention that we now demand about deciding who's going to be our partner, who we share the bed with, who we want to live with, all of this is reduced to one sentence in roughly 5 seconds? Think about that. We're expected to make decisions about the complexities of the human experience within a matter of minutes based on what you're wearing, how you smell, how you look, what type of shoes you're wearing, if your cornrows are fresh. This doesn't seem a little strategic as a distraction? Because let me tell you, once upon a time we used to talk. Y'all not ready. How many of y'all have seen how popular the 90s have become? Well, as someone who grew up well into the 90s, was a full adult, I'm gonna remind you of visiting some of our black models of imperfect love, but love no less, past. We had George and Wheezy. Anybody know? What's that from? George and Wheezy. Talk to me. Who's George and Wheezy? Okay. We had Florida and James. Okay. We had Ashford and Simpson. I may trick y'all with that one. Anybody know Ashford and Simpson? Okay. DJ, you're supposed to be helping me, but this is the time. This is the moment. Okay. All right. We had Whitley and Dwayne Wayne. Y'all remember? We had, this might be a little controversial. We had Jada and Will. They're still hanging on. We had Michael Jordan 1.0 and Juanita. You remember Michael Jordan 1.0? And we had Bobby and Whitney. We did. I'm not saying any of these are models of perfect love, but they were models of black love. Should I continue? We had, again, I'm not saying it's perfect love. We had Cliff and Claire Huxtable. We had Betty and Malcolm. Shabazz, that is. We had the Winslows. Anybody remember the Winslows? Before they disappeared, Jenny, that's a whole other issue. We had, more recently, Rainbow and Dre. Remember Rainbow and Dre more recently? Of what? What's the show? We had Julius and Rochelle. Anybody know that one? All right. That's Everybody Hates Chris. And then we had Tiny and T.I. Yeah. We did, though. The love is there. And we had probably one of my favorites, Martin and Gina. Right? We had Nina and Darius. You said what? Say it again. Anybody know Nina and Darius? Do you want to get up here and recite it? Okay. Just so you know, this is the city. For those of you who haven't seen Love Jones, make that your homework. Imperfect love, but a model of love. And then I'm going to take you somewhere else. We also have one of my favorites now, Justin and Keisha. Anybody know Justin and Keisha? What's that from, folks? Forever. It's the series on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, please do. Please do. The reason why I bring this up is because we've had models through the decades of black love, where we had black men and black women dialoguing with one another. But what has happened largely in social media and with the podcast culture that's erupted from many, many blessings and also many, many curses, now we have Joe Budden and Charlemagne the God and Shannon Sharp, Cam Newton, and Dr. Umar. And I don't have any beef with any of these folks. But remember when I said somebody should snatch the mic? Maybe not snatch it, but turn the volume down sometimes. And let me explain. Because if you've ever listened to any of these podcasts or any of these shows, a lot of these amazing brothers have a whole lot to say about the state of black love and black women without black women being in the room. Call me in if I'm wrong, but a whole lot to say. And that takes me to my next favorite couple, which is not even a romantic couple. Write this down, right? If you have your phone, take it out, write this down. This is, they're real. They're not a romantic couple, but my favorite. And that is Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin. In London in 1971, this beautiful sister and this dynamic brother sat down for a conversation. And essentially, they brought up themes that were impacting Black men and Black women's relationships. I'm going to give you a taste of what they talked about. You ready? Okay. So Nikki says that the only thing that's changed since the era of Martin Luther King is the Black woman. The only thing that's changed since the era of MLK is the Black woman. And here's the rub. Baldwin, who is an openly queer man, asserts that he doesn't think the Black woman has changed, but he does believe the Black woman has become more visible. And Nikki Giovanni then responds and says, no, brother. Black women have changed. Black women are now demanding a reformed foundation of manhood from Black men. She says this to James Baldwin. And you know what James Baldwin says? He tries to correct her and he says, no, you got to be careful. Black women can't go demanding things from Black men, but you can suggest it. I don't think you understand how deep that is. Because for those of you who understand all these terms around patriarchy and gendered representations, James Baldwin will forever be one of my heroes. But even a statement like that could be considered patriarchal. He says, and remember, James is not a straight man. They're not in a romantic relationship. But he corrects Nikki and says, and he says it with love, hold on. You can't go demanding as a woman from a Black man. You can suggest it. And Nikki stands her ground and says, no, we demand it. That's your ego. We demand that we are offered something other than provisions. Y'all aren't ready for that. Because here's where I think it gets complicated. And this sister, who I believe was sitting right here, which I really appreciated your response, this is where it gets complicated. And I'm one of those sisters that helps to complicate it, intentionally or not. And let me explain what I mean. Nikki says, all I know that works in the world is a relationship. She says, lie to me, brother, lie to me. Because I've caught the frowns and the anger. The white man at the job is happy with you. Of course, he doesn't know you're unhappy. You grin at him all day long. But you come home and I catch hell. I catch hell because I love you. And because I love you, I get the least of you. The very minimum. So fake it with me, brother. Is that too much for a Black woman to ask of the Black man? And James responds that he doesn't believe that that's humanly possible for a Black man to fake it. He says, I'm not smiling all day at the job because I want to smile, but baby needs new shoes, meaning providing for the children. I cannot give a performance all day on the job and then come home as a Black man and give a performance all night in the house. The price of the rent is my smile. Here's where it gets deep. Y'all might not be ready. I should sit down, but lock the doors. It's not that kind of congregation, so we won't be passing the plates, but lock the doors so they can't leave. But here's the rub. The Black woman has changed. We've not evolved past you. But brother, many of us don't need you to pay the rent anymore. Not because we're better than you, not because we've outgrown you, but the provisions are there because we can both contribute. But what we do need is a soft landing when we too come home from performing all day on the job. And so my point is, can Black men, I'm asking you, I'm not speaking with judgment. Is it possible for a Black man to fully feel that he can be a man, to feel the fullness of his manhood if the element of the traditional provision is removed from the table as the expectation. If it is instead an emotional provision that we need and expect, is a brother no longer able to do that? Is that something that they haven't learned to do? Is there a level of discomfort? Let me problematize this even further. Remember, I'm a researcher, so I go down all kinds of rabbit holes. Let's go back to Adam and Eve. Let's go back to pop the balloon. You might be saying, how the hell are those two things related? Let me explain. One of the things that I want you to consider is the threat or the fear that arises from the threat for men of being cuckolded by a woman. Have you ever heard this antiquated term, cuckolded? It essentially means to be beguiled, to be fooled, to be betrayed. And if you think about it, biblically, Eve was the OG cuckold to Adam, right? She used her sex, the unveiling of her sex, to trick Adam into betraying, right, his divine assignment. Stay with me, because we're there, right? Stay with me. So let's leave dogma for a little bit and come over here. So when you think about this idea of virtue, how many of you have ever heard of the virtuous woman? None of you have ever heard of the virtuous woman? Wait till you start going to baby showers and bridal showers. It's referenced all the time. So the virtuous woman then should not be a woman that poses a threat to cuckold a man. A virtuous woman should be pristine, should be submissive, should not be a threat to a man's assignment of leadership, which is then in parallel with power. You're not ready for that conversation. If we see leadership or head of household in alignment with power, and a woman, if she is exposed in the literal or the figurative as being a threat to said power, you following me? Are you following me, or do I need to back it up? Are you following me? Let me back it up. Let me back it up. What defines, I want to hear from you, I don't want to just talk. What to you it defines a man as head of household in a traditional sense? Doesn't mean it's right, could be deeply problematic. What to you, I want to hear from you, young folks. What defines, I wore boots so I can jump. What defines head of household in the traditional sense of manhood? What does that mean? You hear it, you grew up hearing it. Money, what else? Provider, protector, what else? Decision maker, breadwinner, procreation, discipline. Now, you know you added that as a footnote because I love that. Keep that, the discipline. Okay, I love that. Keep that. What else? Because I'm hearing a lot. Breadwinner, provider, protector. All of that has to do with provisions. Are you following me? Provisions. What we know statistically is that Black women are now the breadwinners in most households. So what does that do to the emotional psyche of a brother who's been raised and socialized to believe that his worth is attached to his ability to provide? And sisters, you're not off the hook. Because a lot of you don't have a problem with letting a brother go broke so you can say he's doing all the providing and you're saving your checks for the shopping, for the material, for the reminders that this is my house. So I just learned a new term that's floating around the internet. Have you ever heard of a hobosexual? Anybody heard of a hobosexual? Anybody ever heard of Baby Boy, the movie that is? Anybody know who Jody is? Jody and Yvette? Okay. I'll read the definition for you. You ready? All right. A hobosexual is defined. Hold on, let me find it. I got excited and my little notes slid. But a hobosexual is defined as someone whose primary goal is to seek housing with someone because they don't have a place to stay and they use it under the guise of a relationship. Anybody familiar with this? So I want you to contrast this around why some of our sisters are so wounded, where there's this flippant reminder that this is my house, because of the fear around vulnerability and trust that there's a genuine connection in the building of the partnership. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that. A lot of us were raised to, of course, be educated, of course, to have our own money. And what we don't want to say, I hope I don't lose my black woman card, but a lot of us were also raised to have our own separate bank accounts that we keep from our partners. Because you never know when a storm might visit your house, and you need to always be able to take care of yourself and your children. So we need to talk about that, because black girls and black women have also heard mama's baby, daddy's maybe. Anybody heard that? You know what that means? That means that as a black woman, as a black mother, no matter what the outcome is of your relationship with your partner, your children, those are mine. You have to be able to take care of your children, whether or not the man stays or doesn't. So a lot of this attitude around, this is mine, and yeah, you provide, but I'm going to be stacking and saving here, it's a trauma-informed response. It's not because we're mean or we're evil or we want to emasculate you. It's largely trauma-informed. A lot of sisters saw, maybe not in their own homes, but saw in community the struggle when a woman could not provide for her children. And a lot of folks don't want to continue that cycle, or they're terrified of it happening to them. And at the same time, our brothers were oftentimes socialized to be the partners as children, so they were parentified as companions, which is how this bravado of needing to provide happens prematurely. At 21, you don't need to be providing nothing but books and a signed receipt to the registrar's office. I'm just being honest with you. You don't even know what you don't know at 20 and 21 and 20. You don't even know what you don't know. So release some of that pressure. Let me keep going. I interviewed a lot of young people when I was preparing for this talk, and these are the things that came up from young men, your age. They said there's fear around emasculation from black women. They feel that black women emasculate black men like no other group. What are your thoughts? Y'all are real quiet. Are y'all shy? What's going on here? Do you agree or do you not agree? There's no shame. Talk to me. I'm sorry, let me bring you the mic. Okay. Thank you. We're gonna get you the mic, okay, baby? Thank you. So get ready, because I want to ask you, because these came from, I interviewed young people ages 19 to 29, and these are the responses I got.
I would say I agree, especially in our generation, simply because the moment a man has something to say to even oppose a woman or bring another side to a conversation, he's said to be sassy. And that's the biggest way, and they're laughing because they know it's true.
They know it's true, right.
But that is the biggest way for a woman to try to emasculate a man in this generation, and it's became a joke on TikTok and Instagram and things like that. But I know some men who don't say things that they want to say to women because they don't want to be seen as sassy.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Can we give it up? Thank you. Thank you. So I know that to be true. Why do sisters do that? Because this is a dialogue, no judgment. Why do sisters, so if a man emotes or shows a certain vulnerability or emotional state, expresses an emotional state, why is it that the first point of attack from sisters is around his sexuality? I don't have the mic, but you can use this one. Oh, you have the mic. Thank you.
Can I challenge a thought process?
Absolutely.
So while women may be looked at as, from his point of view, as the people that say they're sassy, I want to challenge that men actually emasculate men more than women now, because you can't even have a conversation without saying no diddy, no homo, that's zesty, that's sassy. So black women kind of catching the brunt of what black men have done to other black men. And so now we're at a conversation that we don't want to really have, because nobody wants to check their friend group or look like they're the person that is going to stand up to their boys and be like, that's zesty, that's sassy, no homo, no diddy.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? So that brought that. So why are men weaponizing? So again, the data from my interview is that nobody can emasculate a black man like a black woman. But what I'm also hearing is that nobody can emasculate black men like other black men. True or not true? So why are we doing that to each other?
Oh, I have something to say. I feel like over time we've been realizing that sexuality is performed with those in your own gender, right? So women, we're going to the gym to pump up what we like to see, our own aesthetic preferences, and men are going to the gym to pump up what they see as their own aesthetic preferences. We're performing it against what we see as our competitors and trying to put down others so that we're boosting ourselves up instead of being like, we're in community, we're not competing against each other, there's space to have feelings amongst each other instead of putting each other down.
Thank you. We have here and then over here as well. Thank you.
So just a perspective to consider, right? So I was at, okay. So I was at dinner with a young man earlier this week. He brought up the fact that some people have experienced certain traumas growing up from other, like as a man, may have experienced abuse from another man growing up as a child. Well, that's not something that we hope that's the case, but that's probably part of the language. You want to dissociate yourself from that trauma that you may have experienced as a young boy because you don't talk about it. So that talk of, oh, that's sassy, that's gay, for lack of better terms, it's almost a way of you trying to separate yourself from that fact that that happened to you, that you haven't been able to deal with, or people may not even know. But to that point of, that's probably where that language is coming from. And I might be wrong, but just considering a different perspective of maybe that's where that language is coming from. And then now as women, we hear that, words and things, and we don't know where it's originating. And then now we're saying, okay, you're sassy when you bring up your emotion, but not knowing that between the man and man in those conversations, that's probably where that's stemming from, that root cause.
Thank you.
Just perspective.
I feel like one thing that's very clear from the conversation that's being had is that toxic masculinity does not only affect men, it affects everyone, just like the patriarchy affects everyone. So that's why women kind of can be part of that too, can be part of that so-called emasculation or like trying to emasculate someone. But I think something that was said by Dr. Sutton a couple days ago, and one of the things was how manhood is very much associated with white supremacy. And so earlier you said something like black men are the ones that mainly emasculate black men, but I don't think that's true. I think it's white men that mainly emasculate men in general. And it's like white supremacy is indistinguishable from patriarchy because they have made it so that us as men of color can't attain that like the manhood, the supposed like peak manhood or whatever that is.
Thank you. And did you want me to run it? You sure? Oh, there, hand there. Okay, I'll come to you.
I feel like a lot of points have been made that I guess I'm just gonna touch on from my perspective. I feel like, again, this idea of toxic masculinity has been perpetuated throughout generations for a long time, and because of that, men feel like we can't share our feelings or be vulnerable with each other. And so I think, like you mentioned earlier, Dr. Walks, when you were up there, this idea of like when you were saying in that traditional space of like coming home and feeling like you perform all the time for people out there, and then you finally have a space where you should be able to feel vulnerable at home. And if you feel like you don't want to put that mask on anymore, like I feel like we all look for that type of safe space in general. So like, especially like when we talk about males here, like if you're like we're on our teams, if like that's the language that's being used, not saying it's right, because it's not, but if that's the language being used, the no diddies, the no homos, or whatever, is like you feel like you can't be vulnerable with your teammates, like truly vulnerable, but you have a partner that you feel like you should be able to be vulnerable with, and then you go home and then they're now hitting you with the same stuff, and it feels like you can never really be safe, and you can never be vulnerable, and now you can never actually like let go and like truly be yourself. And I feel like if that's like that trauma as a whole, like now that, like he said, I think like now it's like using that trauma is now either forcing you to like guard your heart more, and now you're like never truly being vulnerable with anybody, which I don't think anyone wants, but that just ends up being the reality.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one more. Oh, two more.
Hello? Hi, I just thought that he made a really good point about us as black people having our guard up a lot with each other. And I think like the trauma response and us having our guard up, going back to his comment about women calling men sassy and kind of that demasculation, I think it comes from us having our guard up. And like you kind of notice when a man is arguing with you or something like that, or maybe like we may write it off as sassy because it seems like a red flag to us, or maybe we want them to be dominant in a way, and it's maybe coming off as sassy to us. In reality, everybody kind of has a different way of communicating. And as women, you want your man to be a leader. Like we're saying, the provisional thing, the dominance thing, and the way you talk to us, we want that kind of dominance. Like even if we're arguing sometimes, like maybe that's from person to person, but I'm just saying like maybe men get written off as being sassy because we have our guard up and we don't like the way we're being spoken to, or we don't really know how to react to the way that we're being spoken to. So we kind of write it off fast instead of communicating through it.
Thank you. I have a question. When you say dominance, does dominance mean maturity? What does dominance mean?
That maturity piece and that intellectual piece. Like, I mean, I think a lot of people can relate when you're talking to someone and maybe you guys aren't really matching up in the same as like maturity, or like maybe like like someone who's older than you talking to someone who's younger, and you're kind of seeing like, hey, we're not really on the same page as far as like our interests or how we talk to each other, and they get written off as sassy, but in reality you have different interests or different maturity levels, and he's not gay or anything, it's just not your cup of tea.
Or people may be exploring their sexuality. We don't talk about that a lot, but a lot of people are still figuring it out. So great points. Thank you for that. There was yes.
All right, we got one more.
One more. Oh, the back. Yeah. Because we got her. These are great points, though. I want to affirm you. These are great points as we wrap up.
So I have like two kind of points. So one of them is like I grew up and my mom's our primary breadwinner, and she's very like this is my house. I'd never get divorced because I have to give 50% of my assets, things like that. So I've always been on that like more masculine woman front. And several people have told me that's a threat. And I will say I do call people sassy. And it's not because they're arguing me or they're expressing their emotions, because the guys that I've been with this weekend understand that I really care about feelings. I have 2 brothers and I've kind of seen some of the trickles. Sassy is more of a tone. Like, why are you talking to me like that? Like, it's almost disrespectful. But going back to like men versus men, like if you think about a football practice or something, you're literally being sitting there being told like you're less tough, you're softer, da 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 da, you're not gonna be a whatever athlete. And that's like the same equivalent as protecting the house, because you can't express emotion, you can't struggle, da da da. And also, how many times have we heard, excuse my language, you're a bitch, don't do this, or you're a bitch, like all these different things. And that's what I'm hearing men say to men. So I think that A, we have to work on the whole like not being threatened thing, and B, we can't sit here and like demoralize our own type. Like the whole you're a bitch thing is crazy to me. I'm not gonna lie. And it's normally normal stuff.
Thank you. So we've come to an end of in terms of this conversation, but certainly not an end to the journey. And I want to leave you with 3 things, because it wasn't just about problematizing these themes and these issues around. We didn't hit the other 3, but I'll just share with you very briefly. The other points that came out of my interviews were, as I told you, emasculation. No one could emasculate a black man like a black woman. Respectability. Certain brothers felt that a woman deserved respect if she performed or at least carried herself in a way that was perceived as respectable. Fear of vulnerability, a fear of betrayal, and I'll use this quote: "A fear that I have is that I only have in a white society 2 things that they can't take away from me, and that's my sense of success and accomplishment and my emotional strength, or at least the way I present my emotional strength to the rest of the world." That came from a black man. So I want to leave you with this. And again, not to bash Dr. Umar, Joe Budden, Charlemagne, Shannon Sharp, Cam Newton, but I do believe we need to go back to intracommunal dialogue. There are so many complexities to the human experience. And then when you add patriarchy, white supremacy, gender, historical trauma, generational trauma, we can't heal in isolation. We cannot heal in isolation. And I fear that what a lot of the driving force behind the commodification of pain, y'all aren't ready for that, but that's what a lot of this is. It's the commodification of pain, because I don't care what you say, people get humiliated on some of these shows. People are humiliated, even if they perform like they're okay. So we cannot heal in isolation. So dialogue needs to continue between black men and black women. And it needs to continue, and this may be controversial, but what I know is very different from my generation that I don't see in this generation, which is not a judgment, just an observation. You don't have multi-generational guidance. You are getting all your wisdom from your peers who often don't know more than what you know, or don't yet know what they don't know. But when you have multi-generational guidance, your elders can gain perspective from the younger folks, and you can gain from the wisdom of the lived experience and mistakes, because our elders have to get more honest about sharing what we did wrong. So please develop multi-generational communities for guidance and friendship. When that's gone, we're in echo chambers of pain and performance. Thank you for your time. Have a great rest of the conference, and thank you for letting me go over, Dr. Sutton. Bye, everybody.